Recording on. Anybody have anything they'd like to talk about Dhamma-wise?
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations.
I guess this is kind of Dhamma related, yeah. Family. I find myself very different to my family, and I find myself slowly kind of pulling away from them, so if that makes sense. Well, look, I don't know if that's the right expression, but I just spent the weekend with my parents, and they just seem like strangers to me, kind of. They're just so different to me that I'm like, who are these people? I don't know. It's just I feel very disconnected from them. And I feel a bit guilty about it. But I've always had a fairly shallow relationship with them. And shallow in the sense that, we don't really scratch the surface with each other. It's just, I don't know. Just been thinking about that, I guess. If anyone's got any thoughts on that, comments, whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. We're on some esoteric Buddhist Dhamma club on the internet. I'm sure we all look at our parents like aliens from another realm, or our family. Society, for that.
And I know they look at me in the same way, like, so, yeah. It's just, it is what it is, I guess, right?
Yeah, feeling guilty too. You got to be careful with that, because it reminds me how Jesus would shock people when they would come see him speak, and they'd just be like complete POSs. Or they would think of themselves as POSs, tax collectors, thieves, whatever, murderers, some of them. And they'd come to him, and he just nonchalantly would just be like, "Go forth and sin no more, you're forgiven." And they just couldn't believe it. They're like, "What? But I've fucking done this. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this horrible thing." He's like, "No, you're forgiven." And they couldn't believe it. And the ironic thing is, in a weird way, they never needed Jesus's forgiveness or God's forgiveness. He already forgave them. They live in forgiveness. Everything was perfect the way it is. But could they forgive themselves? And that's what he put a mirror to them and helped them see. Is that you already forgiven? Can you forgive yourself? So guilt is like, it's nothing but trouble, really. If you've done something that you're not, you don't feel proud of or whatever, don't beat yourself up over it. Just learn from it and try not to do it again. And you're perfect again, You're reborn anew. So there's no, and most of us, we're not doing anything crazy. We're not out there butchering people or some shit. So it can't be all that bad, whatever you're doing, I would imagine. So don't be so hard. So, yeah. Especially when it comes to family. There's no family that's like, man, you could take a picturesque, perfect Instagram family. And there's darkness in all families. There's people hating, people this, people that, fighting. Passive aggressive is a big one in society. God, if I could do away with passive aggressive natures and acting, I would wave my hand like a magic wand. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. But that's what kind of...
Go ahead, buddy. No, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, you see it in certain cultures too, where there's this, and you even see it in Dharma, like in countries like China, where things like filial piety, I think they call it, where you have to kind of serve your parents, and they consider it part of Buddhism. Mm-hmm. And there's this, I feel sorry for them. I'm kind of like, oh man, that must be a drag, having this kind of thing where you have to serve these people. What if you really don't like them? What if they've been really crappy to you throughout your life? You've got to you have this obligation to serve them and look after them. And I don't know, I feel sorry for them.
Yeah, like what I was saying earlier, the Dhamma is kind of like the magical wand that gets rid of all that stuff. Um,
Mm.
in their culture, and in a lot of cultures, it's like, yeah, look after your parents. But obviously, sometimes if you get too deep into culture, you see it for what it is, which is just another. It's just another idea that people are clinging on to.
Mm.
Oh, your parents. It's like, oh, he molested you. He did this. Now take good care of him. It's like, maybe I don't want to. He's a danger. Maybe I,
Yeah.
use your brain. But culture, just like they did to the to the Buddha, they take good practices and they turn them into a religion. They take good ideas and they turn them into a culture. It's a good idea to take care of your parents. It's a good idea to take care of sick people and be compassionate and have loving kindness. It's a very good idea indeed. But when you use it stupidly, it becomes something that becomes a hindrance. It becomes something that's dukkha. Take care of your parents. Yeah, it's a good guideline. It's not a rule. Cultures make rules. Religions make rules. Arrogant people make rules. Kings make rules. But real Dhamma practitioners, they just have nice guidelines. You know?
Mm.
I mean, there's a million people who disagree with me. There's a million people who can look at me and say, as an individual, and say, oh, I got you. You're like this, but you should be like this. It's like, okay, you got me. I'm not perfect. I'm not the greatest. You're better than me. You win. You're more wittier. You're smarter. Who gives a shit? Whatever. Like Dhammarato always says, his teacher used to tell him, not sure. And that's how we can act in the face of any adversities. So what? Whatever. Not sure. It's not a sure thing. I don't know what the outcome will be. You know, I'm living a
Mm.
simple, compassionate life. No bad karma can really spring from that. However you want to look at it, in the mundane or super mundane way, however you want to, whatever way you want to slice it. If you're living a simple, good life, and people are stupid, so they need a whole library of Pali Canon stuff to tell them what it means to be a good person. Tell me
Mm.
what do I have to do to be good? Please give me a whole bunch of scriptures to memorize. Like, really? You can't figure that out for yourself? Well, society says this, and this guy says, what do you say? What do you think being a good? Jesus narrowed it down pretty well. He said, treat others as you would like to be treated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people will make that into a rule and worship that as well. But if we look at these things as guidelines, then the wisdom can appear because the clinging is gone. The attachment, negative attachment's gone. And then you can have good attachment, which is willingness to let go if need be, because it's not going to last. Yeah, anybody else want to speak on what he was saying about family shit and being an outcast or feeling guilty or not relating to our family?
I would say that I agree largely with what Dhammadasa was saying. But I would also say that there's sort of like another way of looking at it. I think Dharma practice in the beginning can strengthen the sort of the core of what the problem is that we're trying to uproot. Ironically, it starts by moving in the wrong direction, because sort of the root of our suffering is our sense of isolation, our sense of separation from everything else, right? That's kind of what the sense of self is that the Buddha is talking about, that sense of separation, that sense of isolation that creates that sense of lack that we call, craving. So when the Dhamma is sort of like making us want to be further away from people, places, or things that bother us, that's like a natural outcome of the practice. But I think when the practice really takes a turn is when you actually start feeling like a greater sense of intimacy with everything, with experience as it is, first and foremost, But when you're around your kids or your parents, when you're around people, there's a much greater sense of intimacy, because that's when the practice really starts to uproot that sense of selfishness, is a way Buddhadasa like to talk about it. A greater sense of isolation. And just thinking about Buddhism in China and Chinese culture, just to put that into context, when Buddhism traveled from India to China, it shed off a massive cultural context that's part of early Buddhism, which is just the whole cosmology of rebirth. And it fit itself into like the Chinese, a perspective on nature that the Chinese already had, which is that nature is this like organic unfolding, whether it's material or mental, it wasn't really the concern, but they definitely saw nature as like a unified unfolding organism.
Are you talking to your friend, Dada?
Yes. You know,
Hi, little.
he's asking what all of your names are. Sorry.
I'm Dhamma.
Luke here. Hello, mate.
Jonas, DJ, and Patrick.
And there's me and you, Dada.
Yes, that's me and you.
And I'm watching Mickey Mouse Little.
Okay, go back and watch Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse, sweet dude.
I only let him watch Mickey Mouse on Wednesdays because it makes me uncomfortable.
My son
all right.
watched the Grand Theft Auto Mickey Mouse jumping off of buildings and splattering onto the ground. Probably should let him watch it.
This is Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which I find to be very overstimulating, but that's a different story. Let me just summarize my long-winded thought process. Have you guys ever seen the image of Indra's net? It's I think I mentioned it actually, ironically, on our last call.
I remember you mentioning it, but
the natural image of it is like a spider web after it's rained. If you look very closely at each intersection of the web, there's a drop of dew, and inside each drop of dew is a reflection of every other aspect of the web infinitely, like when you face two mirrors into each other. So that expresses the understanding of the Dhamma that made its way to Chinese culture, which is that, what Thich Nhat Hanh expresses dependent origination as interbeing. He says like a cloud is made of non-cloud elements, a paper is made of non-paper elements. You and I are I'm made of non-Michael elements, Luke is made of non-Luke elements. Everything is made up of everything else. And our sense of self is what creates identification with this sort of unique mixture of everything. And that's what creates separation and isolation. So when you look at the way the Dhamma is expressed in cultures with that understanding, it sort of enforces it sort of enforces selflessness, in it, like the idea that parents would give birth to children, and children that would care for their aging parents. It's sort of seen as like two parts of like a greater process of nature, rather than focusing on like the individual's experience of happiness. Their idea of happiness would be like transcending that sense of individuality through this cultural structure. But of course, the Dhamma is about transcending all structures, right? Our individual isolated sense of self, but even like those larger cultural narratives, you could transcend your individual sense of self by giving it up to a larger cultural narrative. But in the end, the larger cultural narrative is still, something that human beings have created, like what Buddhadasa was talking about. And sort of, so the complete liberation the Buddha offers is something that's like beyond all narratives, And, I was mentioning yesterday that one of these names that the Buddha gave for Nibbana, the unarisen, came, just a logical conclusion that if something is unarisen, but it's present, but it never arises. So then by logical conclusion, it's always already here, so this thing that we call Nibbana, that seems like it's at the end of a long path or very far away, is actually always already present. We're just distracted from it because of all of these different things that we identify with and chase after.
Yeah.
And that's where you can find complete transcendence is by, you know, realizing, as we say, everything is already complete and okay exactly as it is. There's nothing that's missing. There's not really anything that needs to be done. So if you can take that peaceful presence that's always already here into your interaction with your family, then you're going to see their views, their opinions, their actions in the same way that you see, you know, an apple blossom, or, you know, seeds on the wind, or just as another process of nature. You know, the only reason that we allow nature to be as it is and feel so peaceful around it, and then we feel so much dukkha around humans, is because we have assigned personhood to human beings. We assign it to ourselves, we assign it to them. So we take everything involved with humanity personally, you know, which is that affliction of upadana the Buddha talks about. But when we look at trees and we look at flowers and we look at nature, we don't personalize it, and so we feel that sense of freedom and relief when we look at nature. But you know, if you're immersed in the Dhamma, then you can see human beings in the same way that you see the rest of nature. Sort of the point I'm getting at in my long-winded fashion.
No, that's actually a really good point. Like, you think if you're meditating, say, and there's a bird singing out the window, you're like, you know, that's lovely.
Yeah.
That, but if it's someone tooting a car horn,
Mhm.
you're like, oh man, I wish that person would stop tooting their horn. It's sort of, you know, the different reaction.
Yeah.
Are you still talking to your friend?
Yes, I am. All right, I'm gonna hit mute now because Everett's back.
Anybody else got any comments on what he was saying? On what Michael or Luke was saying?
Oh yeah, no, I think it was all beautiful what, you know, Michael had to say, as well as you, Dhammadas. And yeah, just I think also noticing, where the aversion can kind of come up. Like Michael used the example, you know, or actually Luke, of the car horn, right? And so it's noticing like how we are creating that dissatisfaction because, oh wait, there's, you know, that contact with that sound, and there's this conditioning to not like car horns, but to like bird noises, right? And so as we uncondition, right, we can see, oh wait a minute, it's just a sound coming up, arising and ceasing like all the others. So it's all cool, right? So then that allows us to return to satisfaction, you know, much more easily. And that's sort of the point here, is it's coming, like you were saying, Michael, to the unarisen, right? It's like setting the bar so low that it dissolves the bar, right? So
I just have to say, DJ, I love how you phrased it, setting the bar so low, because normally we think of Nibbana as the loftiest thing on the planet, and this is why we miss it. It's actually the lowest possible bar that you can set. You know, it's the condition is extraordinary. You know, it's flashy, it's constantly changing and all that, but it's extraordinary. Nibbana is so utterly ordinary. Our minds are completely trained not to ever notice that it's, like I said, always already what's present, you know, just by virtue of being unarisen. But at the same time unconditioned, you know.
yeah, have to think. Yeah. Have to thank Dhammarato though, for I remember listening to a call and he brought up the bar thing, and you know, that's why practicing with coming back to like, hey, this is satisfying enough, you know. And when it comes to satisfaction, you know, we have a tendency to like, you know, sometimes want to measure it, but it's like, wait a minute, no, it's just satisfaction. Just this is enough. And by it just being enough, you know, it's complete, it's whole, it's without lack, it's wholesome. So yeah, beneficial for the practice here, I've found. And
I think for me, if I can mention it, because I just noticed it today that I oftentimes like think satisfaction is pleasure. And I just noticed this because I was thinking about my past days and how my practice kind of went. And on some days, like all external stuff falls like really nicely. Like the weather is good and my body feels good and the people around me are good and everything just feels all right. And also maybe there's not a lot of clutter in my mind. On these days, it just feels like my practice is really going well. All is good and I'm well on the path. And sometimes there are other days where all these external circumstances don't really fall in that way. Like the weather may be bad or something has happened or whatever. And or I think a lot or some stuff, and it feels like things are not going so smoothly and so nice. And directly I kind of connected to my practice not being like, it's instantly connected to like doubt that I'm doing something wrong in the practice, when both of these days are actually the same. Like it's just external circumstances that change it or whatsoever stuff, but the practice is actually the same. Just reminding myself that everything is just the way it is. It's always changing and it's just okay. Sometimes it's good or it feels um, good. Sometimes it feels bad, but it's just okay. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's just changing, The weather, that's a good example because if you like a certain type of weather too much or don't like a certain type of weather, it's going to cause dukkha. The weather's just being weather, just like the mind is just being the mind. It goes up, it goes down. It has kind of a mundane joy and bad feelings, But you'll feel
Yeah.
like some days are good, some days are bad. But we can't change the weather. You can't change your mind. You can only change your grip on the mind. You can only change your clinging. Your brain is going to be happy. It's going to be sad. It's going to have all different types of feelings. But your home, the breath here and now, that everything's okay, will always be there, despite whether it's you call a good day or a bad day. You can always go home to the breath, and all those things will pass. All those feelings will pass, whether they're good or bad, whether it's a sunny day or stormy day. But a lot of people get frustrated because they think, I've been doing the Dhamma practice. Why is this darn mind having a bad day? And the aim is not to change the mind's nature. The aim is to let go of it. Let it be. If it wants to be happy, let it be happy. If it wants to be sad, let it be sad. The only thing we could change is our attachment to it. And I like how the Buddha called it, the refuge, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. It's the refuge. It's like the home when we can take shelter from the storms, and they'll pass. But if you go out and try to fight the storm with a shovel and a pickaxe, you ain't going to win. You're just going to drive yourself mad and cause a whole bunch of dukkha. So don't get sad. Don't get upset when you have a bad day or, I'm feeling this way, but I've been practicing. It's not going to change. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. Your body's going to feel like this. The brain's going to feel like that. Can you be okay with that? When it's not feeling particularly pleasant, can you take refuge in the breath here and now, realizing that everything's okay, and that's just the mind doing what the mind does? If we can do that, then it doesn't matter what type of label we put on the mind, whether it's anger, hatred, fear, delusion, sadness, boredom, happiness, joy, whatever, It's like if there's a storm coming, you say, oh, that's a big cloud, that's a medium cloud. It's all just a storm, and it's going to pass. And that's all you can do is take shelter in the breath here and now. Anything else that you think you can do is just an illusion. Oh, I'll train hard enough and I'll stop thinking. I'll stop having emotions. The stupidest shit I hear is, oh, when somebody I love dies, I'll be so enlightened. I won't have any feelings or emotions about it whatsoever. It's superstitious bullshit. I wouldn't want that even if I could have that. You know, it's a natural process that these things happen the way they do. It is what it is. We stop fighting it. Anybody else want to talk about that?
That made me think of recently I posted on the Discord server, like in the Wholesome chat there, Wholesome thoughts, just it's okay to feel this way, which is like, you know, like whatever that you're feeling, like that's okay, but that's already changing it from, you know, this aversion to whatever or clinging, but mostly, yeah, the aversion aspect, two sides of the same coin, but to just being cool with it. It's okay. We're coming back to it. So, and really being able to see that these emotions, these feelings, they're passing, they're arising and ceasing. But as we kind of come to this diminishing of the aversion to them, you know, it's funny because we come back to this satisfaction, or, you know, that is not born from anything, right? That's not dependent on anything, you know, that can't even really be objectified. It's more like freedom from dissatisfaction rather than this thing that we objectify, because anything that's a thing winds up dying. So it's all, I mean, I think another thing that's really cathartic or just like springs to the truth is that, yeah, none of these little objects are lastingly satisfying. That's the truth. But that doesn't mean that, hey, one can't be okay or can't be satisfied. It's just that, you know, when it's dependent upon things, it's going to be rocky, you know? And that's why this path is so, well, it's remarkable to really be able to see, oh, wait, no, there's a way out. And it's cool, baby. It's cool. Because nothing, at the end of the day, nothing beats chilling out. But yeah,
About
oh, sorry.
sorry. About what you said, Dhammadasa, about if someone dies, I'm gonna be so enlightened. It reminded me of, I think it's like a talk by Ajahn Amaro. I listened to, and he recalls something I think Ajahn Sumedho said, like, or a question that was asked him, but it said something like, what does a Buddha know that ordinary people don't know? And I think Ajahn Sumedho just answered, yeah, just that everything is impermanent and always changes. And I think he kind of mentioned this in when he was talking about like that enlightened people or people that are yeah, practiced for a long time, still these unwholesome thoughts are coming up, but there's just nothing anymore where it can hold on to. Like there's no identity anymore where it holds on to, kind of. But still, it's like a human being, and it's normal to feel emotions and to sometimes have unwholesome thoughts and stuff like this. It's not about kind
Yeah.
of getting rid of what it means to be human.
Dukkha exists always in the past. It can never really exist in the present moment. When you're, even if you make a mistake and you're reflecting on that mistake, you're going to drag yourself back to hell. You know, here and now, everything's okay, everything's fine. And as much as we hear it, it's not always the case that we give that our full awareness, but we give the story of I, me, and my awareness all the time. The character awareness, selfishness awareness, wit awareness, you know, trying to one up this, one up that. And it all exists in the past or the future. And Dhammarato mentioned that's why the Buddha called it the middle way. And when you go into the past or the future, I used to say this in another video, it's almost like when you what's the word? There's a magical word for it. Starts with an I. Invoke. There's evoke and invoke. I don't know the difference. But anyways, when you invoke this character of I, then the past and the future come into existence. It's the vehicle that will take you there. It's the vehicle that will drive you to the dukkha. Because when you're talking about dukkha, you're just talking about something that's not here. You're talking about an illusion, a phantom. Oh, but you should have seen it. You know, it was really bad. It's always it was bad or it will be bad. It's never, oh, things are so bad. And even when they say that, you're looking at them and you're like, doesn't seem like they're bad. You seem like flesh and blood like me, just sitting here. That's the truth of it. But we have bad habits, you know, we get wrapped up in complaining, we get wrapped up in building on our character day by day. And why does it hurt when somebody says something negative to us? It hurts the ego. So the people who are, you ever see I saw a show on supermodels one time, and there were these gorgeous women. And I heard something interesting that one of the producers of the show said. He said, you know, these women, they're so gorgeous, but, you know, I've worked with models forever. And he says, they're the most insecure people you'll ever meet. And there's not a flaw on them, you know, because they get wrapped up in these stories, you know, they get wrapped up in this bullshit. They start to believe, but the truth of the matter, they can't even see. They can't even see how gorgeous they actually are. You take somebody who's like, you know, maybe not classically beautiful, and you go take a look inside their mind, and they might just have no dukkha whatsoever, you know. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what happened in the past or the future. The truth of the matter is everything's just the way it is. Everything's perfect. Breathe in, you relax. And everything else is just noise. But we don't like that. We want a ladder to climb, status to achieve, power to gain, control to take. We don't want to just chill. We don't want to be isolated. We want people to know what we've done, our accomplishments, our goals that we've reached or haven't reached even. We like to share it with others, and that's fine. But see it for what it is, though. Anicca dukkha anatta. It's just passing phenomena. We attach to it, it causes dukkha, and it's inherently empty. Nothing there. There's nothing to it. The thing we're pining and perishing over, the self, it's not really there. It's there to a degree. It's a tool, but it's not powerful. It's like everything else. Won't last. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about or mention or say?
I was just thinking about what Jonas was saying about the Ajahn Sumedho talking about how, say, people who are enlightened or whatever having these feelings and emotions and whatnot. But it made me think about, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but an arahant has removed the 10 fetters. And those fetters, some of those fetters are things like anger. And so does that mean they still feel these things, but they just don't have anything, a ground to kind of stand on? Or do they just never feel anger? Like, yeah, I find that a little bit confusing.
They probably feel everything that we feel. They just wouldn't refer to it as anger. They refer to it as just passing phenomenon of the mind, and they wouldn't get too attached to it. See, but the unenlightened person, if there's such a thing, if you could switch souls, so to speak, in that arahant's body, he's going to stub his toe, but he's fine. He's, oh, this is just a passing phenomenon. You're going to stub your toe and be like, you know, why does the universe always do this to me? This fucking sucks, blah, 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 and complaining. It's not the person that, it's the lack of the person that where the Nibbana comes in. The I is gone. He sees it for what it is. It just is what it is. He doesn't have to like it or dislike it. It's just a thing that happened. He doesn't take it personally. So to answer your question, for me, I don't think that he's sitting there, no emotions, no feelings in the mind. I think that's a myth. But I could be wrong. And I'm okay with that. Anybody else? You guys think arahants have feelings? Thoughts, feelings, and emotions. If you do, that's okay. I don't care. Say whatever you wish. Whether they do or don't. Because that's part of the golden carrot, isn't it? If there wasn't a golden carrot, how much of us would be interested in the Dhamma practice? But we want the golden carrot, but our wrong view of the golden carrot is actually what's causing the dukkha. We think it's this thing to achieve that's just so mind-blowing, like Michael was saying earlier. We think there's something out there that we have to get. But if we look at that pattern of thinking, feeling, and emoting, we'll see that it's just like everything else in life. We just think it's different because we call it Dhamma practice or Buddhism or whatever. But it's the same bullshit game of, I can't wait till I get that thing. Then I'll really be something. Then I'll really be happy. Right? It's the same thing. I'll get the car, then everything. I'll get the pretty woman, then I'll have no problems whatsoever. Not the case. Never is the case. I'm going to get that enlightenment then. The whole thing is that it doesn't exist. You don't need it. You're already enlightened. You're already perfect. Like Jesus said, you're already forgiven. But they can't believe that. They've done horrible things. They can't forgive themselves. They're too attached to what? The story of I. Me, I. Mm-hmm.
Kind of coming back to something that I find quite beautiful in terms of the path is actually, coming back to this, space or lack of space, but whatever, this wholeness, right? That comes from, the abandoning of craving, right? Of needing all these different things, right? While also, still having that enthusiasm to practice, but it's no longer a sludge. It's no longer this burden that you need to go to like get something. It's rather just like, wow, this is enjoyable. This is play. This is fulfilling to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, to remember, to take that look, to make a wholesome change again and again and again. This is actually very fulfilling, and to just kind of keep that up through life, and also to be able to, while we practice, I think it's helpful too to not, delude ourselves into thinking that we're, on that level, like further along than we are in the case that, hey, we don't want to go look at our, whatever comes up, right? We don't want to, I said are, but I mean, we don't want to look at these things that come up and we don't want to acknowledge them. We say, oh, well, I'm past this, but we're not actually acknowledging it and being honest with ourselves. So being honest with ourselves, having that sincerity to see these things, shine a light on them, and then they dissolve, right? So that honesty and sincerity is very important along the path, right? So I think that's something that's helpful too. And I say a path, but again, it can also be interpreted as a method because it's very direct, right? So it's like, we return back to this, but, it's like also developing those skills of remembering to return back to this. And when, all these conditions play out, and again, these conditions are impersonal, right? And that's the thing that's really beneficial to see, that these conditionings are impersonal, right? And this is why kind of working with, implanting those wholesome conditionings of when we see like, oh, the mind's, gone into an unwholesome direction or what have you, is to work with congratulations, because it kind of gets rid of all that shame or that rumination on it. Rather, it's congratulations. We return now back to what is going on now, right? Or paying attention to what's going on now, because again, we're going to be here regardless. It's just that, we're remembering what's going on in the past, or we're imagining what's going to happen in the future, but it's returning to this. And when we recognize that, we can congratulate and return. So
that's well said, dude. And That's why Metta and Sila are also important, because if it wasn't for Metta and Sila, if it wasn't for acts of loving kindness and compassion and kind of a basic set of good morality, then you're just a nihilist, you know, you're just but that's not what the Buddha was, you know. He wasn't
See,
a nihilist,
yeah.
enlightened being.
Sila keeps you sane. I think it's actually very helpful for grounding and to, you know, not yeah, to kind of keep things balanced, right, within the practice. So, you know, Sila, you know, our conduct, how we act, how we speak is very helpful. And it can also show us where those cravings are and when they arise, and the fact that, hey, you know what, we can abandon them, right? Because the reason we wouldn't want to go along, you know, with behaving skillfully is because of an aversion, right? Or an attachment to something, right? So again, and I'm talking about, you know, to a noble Sila, that's also coming from that right noble viewing, that looking, that ongoing, because again, things are changing, right? And so we look and we make that discernment of what is wholesome or unwholesome, right? And then we go with that. But that's, you know, again, it's not from a place though of lack. It's not from a place of, you know, this sense of loss. It's actually, but at the same time, I just recognize, you know, a sense of loss in this, the Dhamma can be quite negative in the sense that we're negating out the dissatisfaction, right? So it's this absence, but that is such a great benefit, right? It's profound, it's beautiful, right? So it's like we can continue through life like this, you know, act in a skillful way and work on that. And again, it's like, hey, this is a tool, right? So we can continue to sharpen and develop these tools and have a wonderful, you know, experience with that, and have this sense of joy and the sense of play, and we can bring that to the Dhamma. And then it's like, hey, there's not a dull day when you're doing that. When one is practicing that with sincerity, it's just like, wow, every single day is a chance to sharpen and develop these skills, and it is a wonder, you know. And then sometimes we put this, you know, those tools down and we just relax and chill the heck out, right? So it's all good.
Yeah, you don't want to use the Dhamma as an excuse, like some spiritual teachers, to abuse people or to commit horrible acts. It's like, you know, that's just demons at that point, you know.
Yeah, no, it's just ignorance. Yeah,
Like Dhammarato says very very wisely, when we're breathing and relaxing and we're satisfied here and now, we're not gonna steal, we're not lacking anything. There's no need to put others down, there's no need to cause harm, there's no need. So the Metta and Sila, you know, they're just fruits of breathing and relaxing here and now, you know. And in the mundane ways, a lot of times they're teaching them metta, sati, sila, panya, and that's fine too. It's not like the mundane views are just, oh, that's a different way. And you could be Christian, you could be whatever, but the bottom line is friendship, being here and now, breathing, relaxing. Call it by whatever name you'd like. You know, I think it's important for the noble Dhamma to be spoken about, because then you could get off on a little tangent in your mind and start thinking of gods and magic and karma and stuff, and it's like, no, bring yourself back to reality. It's not that those people are bad for it, it's just we have a different approach to just like, we don't need that. You want to play around with that stuff, go ahead, it's fun to think about all that. Karma is like, oh, do I have past lives and all this shit? But the real world approach that the Buddha had is can be tested. We don't have to fantasize about it. We don't have to have faith. We don't even necessarily need to have trust. We just need to practice it, see if it works for ourselves. And you'd be surprised how easy it is when you're just sitting there breathing. Like, yeah, all the trouble comes when this fucking character comes in the mind and starts thinking about this and going here and doing that. And I'm so important and getting attached to all these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You know? Just wash some dishes.